Thank you, Sandeep. Hey guys, I'm Ahaan. I head the customer success team here at Outplay. Today we have Kyle Coleman, Group VP of Revenue Growth and Enablement at Clari. By the way, Clari just raised a round of funding, so congrats on that, Kyle. And we also have Michael Conn from Sixth Sense, who is the VP for commercial sales. In case you guys don't know what Sixth Sense is, they're the leaders in the latest 2022 Gartner Magic Quadrant for account-based marketing platforms report. Welcome, Kyle and Michael. Really happy to have you here at Outsell. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Great.
likewise. Doing great. Thank you.
All right. So we're here to talk about customer-centric selling, right? So sales has changed from what you were probably doing probably 5, 6 years ago, right? In the last few years, we have seen a lot of more emphasis on customer experience, and companies have started focus on organic product-driven growth. Customer centricity encourages a culture of respect and interaction with the customers. It ensures it ensures a better customer experience, I would say, which in turn boosts your CSAT scores up as well. I generally say it's not about how you sell once; it's about how you get more customers out of that one sale that you do. So with that, let's start with the basic question that we have. So, what do you guys think about what is customer-centric selling? What has your experience been like so far?
I take that as you're passing to me, Kyle, to tackle the first one. Awesome.
Fire
Well,
away.
yeah, I'll take, and please jump in, Kyle, as you have relevant things to add on. But it's a great question. And so to me, customer-centric selling, it's pretty simple. It's deliver a sales journey that puts the customer at the forefront of all of your interactions. So that's pretty broad. So if I were to narrow that down and even peel it back a little bit, how are you able to stand above the rest of the sellers out there to share a unique perspective, help your buyers learn something, and really, can you confidently say that after each interaction, your customer or your prospect is walking away remembering you and your company? Lead with insights, show you care. And really, one of the core tenets to this is be able to lead that customer through the ideal buying journey. Like, so often, sellers forget buyers don't buy tech all day, and they sure as heck aren't buying your tech every day. You're selling it every day and taking customers through a great journey. And you've seen great journeys, you've seen not so great journeys. So really just have the confidence to guide them through how they should be buying based upon what their peers have done. And oftentimes that's a piece that's missed. But that, if I'm kind of bubbling up, what do I feel customer-centric selling is? I think those are some of the comments. I don't know, Kyle, if you'd have anything to add on top.
I love all of that, Mac. And I couldn't agree more. I'll double click on a couple areas. And the one that you just mentioned, which is the fact that you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, are steeped in your company and your product all day. And you take for granted a lot of the problems that your company solves. Many of these problems, your customers, your prospects aren't even aware of. And so, Mac, what you alluded to is this buyer journey, what you have to take people down. And this is more of a marketing principle that's becoming more and more of a sales principle, which is you have to create awareness, not necessarily of your solution, but of the problem. There is a problem that exists. And now, once you've convinced somebody that there is a problem that exists, then you can position yourself as the solution to that problem. Don't skip that first step. If people aren't aware of the problem, if they don't know that there is something that could be improved in their day-to-day or their month-long strategies or their annual goals or whatever it is, then your messaging isn't going to resonate. And so start with that basic premise that people don't know everything that you know, and you have to guide them through this. So I couldn't agree more on that front. And then the real thing I want to double down on is this finding the intersection between how you sell and how they buy. And if you can find that overlap and make sure that you're always operating in that overlap, yes, you're guiding them through a process. Yes, hopefully they don't buy your solution more than once a year. If they do, there's a problem. But importantly, they buy some sort of tech. They buy some sort of something, and you need to align with the way that they buy. When is security involved? Is there procurement? Who are stakeholders that need to be in? When does finance get involved? All of these different things that you have to ask and create this mutual plan for how you're going to execute this deal, and framing this through the lens of not we're going to compromise everything and we're going to only sell to you, the way that you buy, but rather we have to do these things too. You have to do these things. And now there's mutual transparency, there's visibility, and it's customer centric because you're being open with them about what you need to happen, about what they need to happen. And there's a shared understanding of that. So that to me is customer centric selling.
Right. I've seen a lot of times in companies where we don't empathize with the customers. Once the lead has been lost, it has been lost. We don't go back and have a look at why did we didn't convert that particular lead, right? So I think a more human approach would definitely be very important over here. So, but in a nutshell, let's say, right? Why exactly is this important right now in this day?
Kyle, you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million different ways to go here. You have to, as Ahaan, you just said, you have to know why you're losing deals. You also need to know why you're winning deals. I know that sounds really basic, but it's true. Like, you really need to understand you from a marketing, a top of funnel, this awareness piece that we talked about, you may be taking the complete wrong approach because you're making assumptions that different features or value points or whatever resonates with the customers, when in fact they're buying your solution for a completely different reason. And so you need to understand not just why you lose, but also why you win. And then you can tailor all of your go-to-market strategy around those 2 points and make sure that you're re-engaging in the correct way and that you're focusing on the things about your product or your solution or whatever it is that actually has a resonance, that actually is jaw-dropping, that actually changes the way that your people, your power users, are going about their day-to-day. And so I don't want to make this a 6 Sense commercial, but Mac, you're here, so I'll embarrass you for a minute. We use 6 Sense, and the value of this is that we know what people are searching for. So we have all these intent signals that tell us what keywords do they care about, what kinds of things, topics are they searching for, what competitors are they in the market for, all these sorts of insights that we have. And you better believe we design our outreach strategies around these things. If a customer is interested in solving a particular thing because they're searching on it, we're presenting to them on how to solve that particular thing. And so that's what it's all about. It's understanding what is actually resonating with people by examining wins, examining losses, leveraging every tool that you have at your disposal, and creating a go-to-market strategy that resonates and responds to that set of criteria that you've created.
Yeah, and thanks for the commercial. I do appreciate it, Kyle. But we also are big Clari fans. I couldn't do my job without it. I'll expand upon that in a bit. But to double down on that, we talk at 6 Sense about this concept of the dark funnel. They just think of the premise of buyers don't need to interact with sellers until pretty late in the game. And they, by that time, have probably formulated an opinion. So I call it the proliferation of digital content that allows and equips your buyers to formulate their opinion about your brand. It's kind of scary as a seller, right? So this is why customer-centric matters, because you have to ensure that every time you have an interaction, they want to come back and have another interaction with you. And that's a key concept here. And it's make sure your interactions are meaningful, give them that reason to speak with you. And one of the big things I want to go back on is you, as the seller, you're sitting on a gold mine of data. Like, oftentimes we psych ourselves out. We're talking to a VP or a CMO in our case, and we're like, I, as a seller, I'm not equipped to have a conversation with CMO. I would say stop right now. You absolutely are. As Kyle said before, if you can teach them something that they don't know and help them understand they maybe have a problem, they don't even know really how to, like, let's say, qualify the problem, and you can share with them how one of their peers had that problem, used your solution to solve that problem, and here was the outcome. If you do that, you're sitting on a gold mine of data. And so one tangible thing that you need to do as a seller, though, and this is where I see sellers kind of do really well or a little slow out of the gates, absolutely own your customer stories. Figure out every customer story, pick the brains of all of your product team, pick the brains of all of your customer success managers. And the more that you can create this repository of stories, you're going to be equipped to talk to any C-level of the solution you solve for, because you are living it day in and day out. So have that confidence, and then ensure and make sure you kind of plan in those interactions. How are you going to be, bringing these things up so you deliver like a really meaningful experience? So have the confidence. So oftentimes I see sellers, especially sellers who are newer in their career of selling, you're timid. I kind of fall into that sometimes too, right? Have the confidence, prepare, do your research. And I'm telling you, you can have a conversation with any C-level out there if you're delivering value. And that is going to make the difference of your team winning the deal versus them ghosting you. You close losting it, or maybe just no decision. But at the end of the day, it gives you that type of confidence to really up your game.
On that point on customer stories, Mac, I don't know if you experience this. I'm not calling anybody out by name, but I have seen over and over again our reps or sellers, if they send the customer stories, they send the videos, they send the case studies. I'm like, hey, have you read that? Do you know what it actually says? Give me the 2-sentence summary. And they're like, well, I haven't. I read it a couple of years ago. You're like, oh, really? Read this stuff, like to internalize it, be able to tell the story in live time when you're on a demo, like weaving in these customer stories, Mac, that you just said. This is why you're here. Like, if all you were here to do is to show the demo, like there are videos for that. But you need to have these narratives, you need to have these stories, you need to understand the situations, the obstacles that your customers are overcoming, so that when you hear about those obstacles on calls that your prospects and customers are experiencing, you can talk about it in a live time kind of way. You have that credibility. Like, that's what executives care about. They want to hear that you are solving other executive level problems. And so I couldn't agree more with that advice, Mac. Like, interrogate your CS team, study the marketing materials that your team creates, really, really know it well.
Yeah. And the last piece is a seller, because I think we're hitting on this point because it's so important, is every interaction you have with a prospect or a customer, you're hearing and you're gaining knowledge. You're hearing about challenges they have, and then ultimately you're bringing them on, hopefully as customers. That's a story, right? That's a story that it doesn't need to be a published case study. It's a story, and it's a real tangible example. And like, if you have these stories, you can use them by name. I could say, you start talk about, oh, totally hear you. This is the exact problem. Have you met Kyle at Clari? Like, if you can do that and make that your story, it resonates so well, and it gives you so much credibility, and they're going to want to come back for more. And that's the goal. Have them come back to continue the discussion. Because every time you have a discussion, it's a chance for your competitors not to be having the discussion. And that's what you ultimately want to do.
Right. I think, Kyle, Matt, you said something very intuitive too, because this is what we do at Outplay as well. We have a very consultative approach to sales as well as CS. We kind of understand what exactly is the problem, right? A lot of people are there, this just sell, right? They don't understand the issues. They don't understand what other things that they're trying to solve with your tool, right? So we take a very consultative approach over here, where we kind of understand the use case. We kind of understand what are the other teams involved apart from sales with them, right? Because it has to be a part of your culture, not just another tool that you're using. Because if you are replaceable, then they will replace you, right? That comes into the picture very, very soon. The moment you sell something to them, it comes into the picture right then and there, right? But how do you make a customer-centric selling? It is not just for the sales team, right? It's a culture that you imbue from your company. So how do you make a company first culture over there, where the customer comes first, right? The customer is the core of your entire process. How do you make sure that happens?
Want me to tackle this a little up front, Kyle? And then, I think you nailed it kind of there. It's a mindset. I do believe it's truly a mindset, and it needs to be a collective mindset. So that is what I would share, is if there is not collective agreement across the organization that customers should come first, first off, I would throw some caution to the wind on that, if that's your organization's mandate. But I know a lot of companies, for multiple reasons, have embraced this. So I'm hopeful if you're listening and you're here, like your company has some element of this mindset that we do need to put customers first. And so, assuming that there's at least some, let's call it the 80-20 rule, 80% of folks agree with this, right? Like, how do you actually then like tactically do this? And it can be tough, but if you like break it down, and I'm going to give a few like tangible examples, it's not actually that hard. So one of the things Kyle said that like is so true is it's got to be mutual. Like mutual is a really important thing. I call it going from the me to the we. Like get out of the me mindset, and it becomes we. As soon as you start talking, instead of like, well, can you do this? You start talking about how do we do this? You're winning that. You're winning that conversation because you're creating it mutually. And so like one little thing to do, just make sure you show up prepared. Like a super like easy thing to do, but oftentimes forgot, like, it doesn't matter what you sell, show them that you care. And we talk about this all the time. How do you do that quickly? So do super efficient prep. Make sure you understand who they are, what does their company do, and a couple examples of like customers you have that you can rattle off. If you got 3 minutes, you can probably do that, right? Just do the bare minimum to show up that you care, because that's where honestly first calls can go one of two ways. And if you don't show up and you get called on it, it's not the best experience. So just make sure you do prep and show you care. And then one of the things tactically that we like at 6th Sense, we have like a big culture of role playing and a big culture of like enablement, upfront contracts. This to me is like, oftentimes if you're thinking tactically in a sales process where things get lost, it's key to have an upfront contract, because that's where you're setting the clear expectations of the mutual goal of the meeting. And it makes sure that it's indeed mutual. So that's one of the things, if you think of like building one and tactically what can you be doing, work on your upfront contracts. And you'd be shocked. I get sold to a lot. Kyle, I think it's sold to like 10 times more than me. But a lot of times, like, so he probably has better experience, but like half the times folks don't even have an upfront contract. We just jump in. So I'm not even sure and oriented around what we're marching towards mutually. And if you could do that, number one, you make sure there's like, it's a mutual goal. There's no like opaqueness here. We're doing this together, and it's a contract. You're saying, hey, if we deliver on this in the meeting today, can we agree that we're going to spend more time doing X, Y, or Z? And it gives you that freedom to then make the ask at the end of the meeting, did we deliver on that? So if you're thinking of a few like just tangible takeaways, call it 3-minute prep, minimum 3-minute prep, and just focus on upfront contracts and see what that does. And I think those will be some needle movers for you. There's a lot more to it, but I think it starts with mindset. And then from there, it's like, hey, let's just make sure every interaction, we're running a very solid and strong process. So I'll pass it because I'm sure Kyle has tons of perspectives here.
I co-sign everything that you just said, Mac. Couldn't agree more. I love that this starting point that you had of mindset, which is this customer love, the one with customers, whatever you call it internally, it should probably be a cultural value. And if it isn't, you need to make it one, some form or fashion. It needs to be the mindset of your CEO. It needs to be the mindset of your chief of products. You need to think about the product roadmap and understand these are the things that we're creating because they're in service of either things that our customers are asking for and need, or that we know will continue to drive value. And you need to have stories around that. So again, understanding how your customers are using the product, what's going well, what kind of challenges they're overcoming. And then here's how, when you're presenting the roadmap, you can speak to those customer stories. And that mindset infuses all across your company and informs your sales cycle. To get into the tactical weeds, to kind of double down on some things that Mac was saying, something that from a customer experience standpoint or prospect experience standpoint, which is extremely frustrating, is when I have to have the same conversation over and over and over again with different stakeholders because they're not transferring information. So if I'm having a conversation with an SDR and they are doing their job and they're getting all these great qualification notes, and then they don't hand them off to the AE, and then I spend the first 15 minutes of a call with an AE talking about the same thing, I'm like, y'all, what are you doing? And so you have to really focus on the information gathering step one, but then information transfer from SDR, from marketing to SDR. So marketing, how did this person come to us? What do they care about? SDR, what did I talk to them about? AE, what am I showing on the demo? SE, what kind of technical fit, solution fit kind of stuff do I need to know? Professional services, how does that is that going to flow through implementation? Customer success, what are we doing to make them successful? Account management, are we doing the things to make them successful, and all the way around? And so it's a lot about, it sounds so basic, but so many companies don't do this. Have a consolidated, aggregated spot for knowledge, collect that knowledge, hold yourself accountable to collecting detail in every conversation you're in, and take the notes and write it down and commit it. It will help you. It will create the right prospect experience that translates then into the customer experience. And this is how you actually go the extra mile to care about your customers.
Right. I think, Kyle, I'll totally agree with you, right? So we used to have this discovery workbook, which starts with the pre-sales. And then they fill in all the details that they get about the customer in that Excel sheet, and then it gets carried forward to the sales. And then, they fill in all the use case details, where they're coming from, who are the competitors, which tool they were using. And then these keeps getting, carried on by the implementation team, the managed services, the customer success. So in the entirety of, let's say, a customer 360 view, right? Where they're coming from, are they happy? What was the sentiment they came in with, and what is the sentiment they are currently in, right? That being said, what are the key KPIs that we can, kind of look into while doing something like this? What are the key KPIs, Kyle?
It depends on what stage. If we're talking about kind of the pre-sales side of the house, then the KPIs that I'm looking at, and Mac, I would be really curious to get your take here, are on conversion rates from stage to stage. And I mean, like in the lead funnel as well as in the opportunity funnel. So kind of two different funnels here to look at. If we are creating a good prospect experience, I would expect our qualified leads to turn into opportunities at a higher clip than in a scenario where we're not creating a good prospect experience. What I mean by this is we sell forecasting software. We do a lot more than this, but a lot of companies come to us for forecasting. If we know that this company, using 6 Sense, using the tools at our disposal, is interested in forecasting, then the SDR team should be doing outreach that's based around forecasting. And when we get them on a demo, we should be focusing the demo on forecasting. And like, this stuff is not rocket science, but it shows up in conversion rates. And so we see SDRs, individual SDRs, and we see individual AEs that have higher conversion rates, and we go and we talk to them and we review their calls and we do the role playing that Mac talked about. We say, what are you doing differently? Like, what sequences are you running? What emails are you sending? What are you writing? And then the AEs, what demos are you showing? What workflows are you highlighting? What customer stories are you telling? And we understand individual approaches that then become the best practices that then get standardized across the team. And so it sounds really basic, but a lot of managers don't link conversion rates back to the behaviors that are driving them. And if you can find that linkage, it's more often than not, 9 times out of 10, if not more, the reps that are really taking this customer-centric approach, that are the ones that are more successful. So those conversion rates in your lead funnel again, and then in your opportunity funnel, super, super critical for you to understand why it's different from rep to rep, and then do your best to replicate that behavior.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And the key is you have to have a baseline of data. So you've got to figure out your baselines, and you got to I'm a fanboy of Clari. I'm a power user of Clari myself, so I'm not going to embarrass you a little bit, Kyle, but you have to have a tool set that allows you to not just forecast, but we call it in our CMO Latin, he calls it identify the red, right? And so for me, I use Clari extensively to manage stage by stage conversion rates, because that is how you will track from a quantitative perspective, is our customer-centric approach working? So it's actually really easy for me to visualize how reps, teams, and then my overall business is tracking kind of week over week, quarter over quarter, year over year in each of those conversion rates. We operate in like stage 0 to stage 6. And so I use that, and it then helps me accurately identify the red and then actually forecast out. And so it's key and paramount. The other things that you should track, though, because these are really important, not just conversion rates, but what's happening to your average deal cycle times. I think you're going to see a very positive impact on shrinking that from qualified op to closed one, and your average deal values, because you are delivering a great experience. You're telling a more holistic story. You're mapping their pains, and you're just delivering a better sales cycle. So you're in the lead, and you're going to see those go up. But on the back end, we're talking customers. It's super important to apply this, not just to new business sales, but existing customers. And so the key paramount metrics, and why a lot of investors care so much about the customer-centric selling approach, is your GRR and your NRR, your gross retention rate, your net retention rates. And you will see, if you deliver a great first interaction ever with said potential customer throughout the life cycle of them as a customer, you will see those go up significantly, because you're bringing on the right customers too. So that's more of, I would say, like a long tail that you're able to track, but you absolutely need to be tracking your GRR and NRRs. And then the other piece is like the qualitative stuff that Kyle was talking about. This is, I call it the fun stuff. Are you getting unsolicited emails about how awesome your reps are? Are you getting unsolicited LinkedIn posts about how your team did a killer job? Is your CEO getting an email about the great job your rep did? Like, these are the qualitative ones. And then also, like, as you're, like, I call it riding shotgun on calls, or you're using a call recording tech and you're like listening back. If you're a leader, I would encourage you, listen to the last 5 minutes of each call. It's really interesting, because that usually gives you like the summation of how'd that call go. You don't need to like listen to the full call. You don't have time to do it, and just hear. And I call this the qualitative fun stuff, because it's so fun. It's the most rewarding thing in the world to see, like, a shout out. I just got one yesterday for one of my reps. I was reaching out to a VP of sales, and they were like, by the way, your rep is fantastic. And it's like, that is the type of stuff that you're moving the needle, and then take that qual plus the quant, and that's the recipe for tracking success.
Awesome. So Matt, I think you spoke about how things are going through. So Sixth Sense is all about buying behavior and measuring it in data, right? So have you noticed any major changes in the last 2 years?
In terms of kind of the dark funnel activity we're picking up, and the key topics that folks care about, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take you through a couple facets. So yes, we are noticing that as we look at like a wide range of just topics in the go-to-market world, we are seeing things related to customer success, customer centricity, and overall, let's just call it customer experience. They're picking up quite a bit. So from the insights that we're able to glean across the market through our own technology, those are terms and topics that are near and dear to many companies' hearts right now, and we're seeing it in the data. And then in terms of like, Kyle interacts with a lot of sellers and sales organizations, as do I'm oftentimes talking to our customers. I'm oftentimes talking to prospective customers, and a lot of times it dovetails away from what Sixth Sense is selling. It's usually just more of a, conversation, just like I'm trying to pick their brain real fast to get some insights about how I can improve myself and my team. This topic comes up all the time, and it may not come across as exactly customer-centric selling, but the core tenets we're talking about that are the underpinnings of customer centricity are always talked about. How can we outsell and deliver a better experience for our buyers? And that's what customer centricity is about. How do you deliver a better experience? And so it is a topic that we talk about all the time. So from the data perspective, the quantitative, that we see it in our own data, and then the qualitative, almost every conversation I'm having across the board with folks who want to talk a little bit, not about Sixth Sense and more so about kind of, core go-to-market business. When people get this right, companies thrive. When you get it wrong, companies struggle. So it's a topic that if you're not talking about it, not thinking about it, you got to think about it today, and you got to start planning for it today.
And to that point, the way that I hear a lot of, the way that I train a lot of SDR teams, ourselves included, and then hundreds of other SDRs and AEs that I work with from a prospecting standpoint, is that you need to understand not just what your company does, not just the things that you do. You need to understand different levels of what your company does, the features that you have, the way that those features bundle up to help personas, the value that brings to personas, and then importantly, the strategies that you can be in service of, the company-wide strategies that your solution can help with. Then when you're doing your outreach, when you're doing your messaging, when you're doing your presentations, and that's not just about this little feature that we have, or hey, check out this product demo. It's, hey, you just raised $200 million. You're building a sales team in Latin America. Here's how we can help you build that sales team in Latin America, or increase onboarding efficiencies, or replicate the best practices, or find your ICP, or whatever it is that's about this higher level strategic initiative that is about them. It's not necessarily something that scales. And so a lot of people shy away from it. They're like, oh, well, I could only send that message to that one company. It's like, yeah, because it's about them. Like, you need to do the research to actually understand the strategies that the VP, the C-level, the board cares about. And if you can tie your product to those strategies, that is customer-centric selling. And that is how you, like Mac just said, you get away from talking about the bits and bobs of your product, and you have a much more strategic conversation around what that company is really trying to do, not necessarily today, but maybe over the course of the next 6 or 12 months, or maybe even the next 2 to 5 years. And this is how you become a trusted strategic partner with them, and not just a vendor. And that's a major, major difference. And that's been a big trend that I've seen happening, especially as there's more competition, there's more feature parity than there ever has been before. And so now it really is about every rep, not just your enterprise reps that have been doing this for 30 years, it's about every rep being able to become the strategic advisor for the company that they're working with, because that is how you resonate, and that's how you show them that you actually know them.
Yeah. And that's, I couldn't agree more. And it does spur one comment I want to kind of pull us back to about peer validation. Like, again, to the comment of sometimes you feel a little intimidated by talking to a C-level or a VP level, or whoever you're talking to, because they're, an expert in their domain, but they're just like us. They want to learn, they may put on a facade of being, they have to know all, but they truly want to hear from you and learn from you. Like, what are their peers doing? And if you can take the intersection of how you can explain that well, and then wrap it into the example Kyle just gave of understanding their business, that understand them, take them that you've learned, whether it's through your research or some really good discovery, and then translate that into, this is exactly or very similar how one of your peers tackled that. It, to me, is like the recipe for success. Quick discovery, do your prep, but then where we often fall short, taking discovery into how you can help them. And that comes with your own internal due diligence, your own internal kind of repository of stories.
Right. So see, we all know that the customer is the king, right? And there has always been a base for selling strategy. However, digital selling kind of works a little differently. So what advice would you give sales leaders when it comes to their strategy? What can they do to make it most customer-centric in this world right now, right?
I mean, it's a lot of the things that we're talking about today that we've already discussed. Like, do your research, understand what these companies are actually trying to do. Not just what your product does, but what these companies are trying to do. When you're doing your account planning process, set the expectation with your sellers that they actually do the research to understand, how does this company make money? Like the business acumen. How are they actually setting themselves up for growth? What are key hires that they're making, and why? Why do we think they're making those hires? What does that indicate? Like, train your sales team to do research, and then to think about what that research actually means, and then how your solution can help the company achieve that higher order goal. And if you can pivot in that direction, all of this information is readily available. Like, Google it. If I want to know what's going on inside Mac's company, I just Google 6 Cents CEO interview, and I'll get all of the information that I need to be able to craft an effective outreach strategy to Mac and his team. And it's the sellers that take the time to do that. It's the managers that set the permission structure to be able to do this, to give their sellers the confidence that they can and should be thinking in this way, and not just hammering calls and executing a high volume of tasks, but really pivoting toward thoughtful outreach strategies. That's the way that you can take advantage of this digital ecosystem and all the information that's at your disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I'd add there is, as a sales leader, it is your job and duty, in my mind, that you need to equip your team with this, that you need to over-index on enablement. Oftentimes, you kind of revamp the sales process, you revamp the pitch, you revamp whatever it may be, you make a change, you give them 30 minutes of training, you have them do 1 30-minute cert, and then that's it. You need to spend a lot more time. That is your job. That is your job, is to set the foundations. I like how you said, set up the permission structure. Like it is your job to do that. And so I would, if you're a sales leader and you're thinking, how, gosh, we got a lot to do. We got a lot to tackle, right? Break it down into your sales process. Just break it down, pre-opportunity to like customer, and break it down, and then tackle little chunks at a time, and just do a real honest assessment of where can you improve with some additional layers of, let's call it, customer centricity from some of the tips and tricks we've shared today. And then take it piecemeal. You can't do it all at once. Figure out where's the most glaring red, or the most glaring potential green, right? The biggest opportunity, and focus there. Focus there for a month. Focus there for a month. And take it step by step, day by day. And in 6 months, you'll look back, and I think you'll be really pleased. So you as a leader, you got to over-index on the enablement of this, the coaching, the continuous coaching of it. Look big picture, focus small picture, I guess. Tackle little pieces at a time. Otherwise, it can be so daunting, and you'll hit analysis paralysis. So that would be my 2 kind of like thematic recommendations.
Right. Max, from a revenue standpoint, right, which one would you prefer? Digital selling or in-person sales?
It depends on the motion. It really depends on the motion. I like getting in front. I grew up kind of as an enterprise seller. I now lead a commercial, more like velocity type of a business. I love both. They're very different. And each one kind of warrants a different approach. And so I think it goes back to something Kyle said earlier about buyers buy in a certain way. Well, selling orgs sell in a certain way, and different pieces of the selling org. So you kind of have to match it to what makes the most sense for your team. Typically, a more velocity, like, some of these terms like commercial or SMB type of emotion are make much more sense to be more of a digital first sales motion, whereas an enterprise or strategic motion, like in-person selling. Obviously over the last 2 years, that's, that shifted, of course, but I think we're getting more back to that. So I think it really depends on your motion, which you prefer. I still get butterflies and super fired up after a great in-person meeting. So that it's hard to replicate that over the phone, but a lot of sales orgs, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, getting on a flight and, spending 72 hours out of the field. It's, productivity killer. I can't tell you, I live in the Bay Area and live in the East Bay. And I used to cover a lot of companies down in San Jose, and the amount of hours I spent on 880, I'm like, give me that back. And I'd pull over. I knew my gas station stops. I'd stop at, I had good Wi-Fi, and I'd get my notes out. But it's a kind of, it depends answer. But I think there's value in both. And I think a blended approach is probably the best way to do it. And I'd be interested, Kyle, your perspective on that.
It depends is the right answer. I mean, there's so much value in going in person. Our CRO, our SVP of sales, they talk about this mentality of walking halls. What you used to get out of it, and still do now that COVID is hopefully waning, is you get to not just present to this group, but you get to just be in the building and you get to talk to people, and you get the little 30-second, 60-second conversation that informs your point of view, where you're like, oh my God, I actually know what's going on here. This is so useful. And so the mentality is what's important here. Can you replicate that completely only in a digital forum? Probably not, but you can try. Like, reach out to, cast a wide net, reach out to the people that you would meet if you were walking the halls at this company, and just try and have a 5-minute conversation with them. Something actually, Mac, that the 6th Sense team did a great job with me was we got on a texting basis, and my rep, Zach Garner, he would text me all the time about things about the deal, things about life, whatever. Like, we became legitimate friends through the process. And so that's something that you can fold into your approach when appropriate. You don't want to, you don't ever want to overstep. You need to be mindful about people's privacy and all of that sort of thing. But trying to replicate the mindset of walking the halls is definitely possible in a digital way. And it makes a difference for your understanding of the account and how customer-centric you're able to be, because you actually have a robust understanding of who you're selling to.
That's such a great point. Replicate the walk in the halls digitally, because it's so important. And figure out, try multi-channel. Like, you know, if you reach out to individuals, in little tip, like show up to your Zoom meeting 5 minutes early. Who's on? Hey, good time to just get to know someone on a personal level. Use the Zoom chat. Direct message people to see, hey, is this, you know, in terms of someone makes a point early on in discovery and the SC's running the demo, drop them a line like, hey, I know you were asking questions about this. Is this covering that topic? It's crazy how much you'll get from those interactions. And they're of paramount importance. Because on the flip side, when, you know, I've been able to formulate a great relationship with the Clari team since we've been, you know, kind of joint customers. And Caitlin at Clari, she pinged me one day on LinkedIn. We had a great relationship. She delivered an incredible like sales process and getting us on board. She asked a question, you know, if I could help out on something, and I asked back. I was like, hey, by the way, I don't think I'm getting the most value out of trend, which is one of the components. I'd love to get some. Immediately, she got me on with someone, and now I use that in the way that I was just describing how I measure conversion rates. Like, it's about that relationship piece. You can absolutely do it digitally. It takes time and it takes a focused effort, but if you're thoughtful about it, you can absolutely replicate that, walk in the halls and build relationships. That last past the sale, right? I think that's what you're hearing from me and Kyle, last way past the sale, which is another key component for another day. But
great. Before we go, I have just last question, right? And a very obvious one, I would say. What does the future look like for customer-centric selling?
I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I would say, like, all right, so I'm an older dude, right? Like, I've been selling for a bit. I won't age myself like fully, but I've been selling for a while, and like the pendulum has swung to like very much customer-centric mindset, and it's the right way for things to go. Like, I truly believe at the end of the day, we sell something that delivers, or hopefully delivers, value to the customer. The customer should always come first. So that pendulum is there, and I don't think it's ever coming back, which is a good thing. I truly believe that's like a very good thing for all parties involved. So at the end of the day, like, as we mentioned before, the timing is like, it's now, it's yesterday. So if you're not embracing this, you're not thinking about this, and a simple one for each of you individuals to think of after every interaction you have with the customer: did they walk away thinking more highly of our brand after that conversation? Did they walk away having learned something from that conversation? That's what you can do immediately. And I would encourage you shift your mindset. You start making changes. I don't care if you aren't in sales and you're listening to this. I don't care if you're an SDR. I don't care if you're an MDR. It's your first day on the job. I don't care if you're a 25-year selling vet. Like, absolutely, you can make changes and they'll impact right away. So focus on it now. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't think the pendulum's shifting back anytime soon. So if you're not focused on this, get focusing on it ASAP, because it's going to help you out a ton.
Totally agree. And yeah, I think the future is here. And I think that, again, from a focus area standpoint, make it as easy to buy as possible. Really be critical about your process and look for any little bits of stickiness that you can unstick. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what exists. What part of your security review is a pain in the neck for customers? Or what part of an implementation process it could be improved? Or what part of your renewal process is not as good as it could be? Like, really have a granular look at everything, because if it's hard to buy from you, and you'd be surprised how hard some companies make it, you're not going to win. Like, you're putting up unnecessary hurdles, and you're proving through your actions to the customer that you don't care about them, that you only care about you, that you care about your process. And if you're super rigid about your process and not really focusing on how to make it easy to buy, you're going to lose. Customers expect a seamless process. More and more B2C type principles, type experiences are now becoming expected in B2B, and you have to be able to meet them where they are. Think about who the buyers are. And the buyers for software used to be, and in certain respects still are, people that are just a little bit older now than the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation, that is becoming more of your economic buyer, more of your economic decision maker. And they just have a different way of consuming information and different expectations for how they get stuff. And you have to meet them where they are. If you just try and stick with your process that's been successful for however many years and you're kind of head in the sand about it, you're doing yourself a disservice and you will get outdated. So really think about the buyer. It's what we've been talking about all day today. Think about how they like to buy. Think about creating a seamless experience for them across every stage of your process. And that's how you constantly stay ahead. It's an evolution, as Mac has said before. It's not like you're just going to come in tomorrow with your muskets and there's going to be a revolution and you're going to just everything's going to change. It's going to be little things that you see over the course of months. And then, as Mac said, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, you're going to look back and you'll be like, wow, I'm doing the same job totally differently. And that's a great thing. And that's how this stuff happens. It happens in the trenches. It happens by the people doing the work. So pay attention to it and be willing to make changes.
All right. That brings us to an end of this panel discussion. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure having you over here. Thank you, folks, for watching this. And it's back to Sandeep.